Hi, you guys. This is infection control, and this is lesson 1A. So, what exactly are we going to learn today? Well, we're going to focus on two topics. The first one is the federal agency. The second one is the state agency. So, the federal agency has a lot of responsibilities, and here we see three departments that it has under its branch. Okay, so the first one that we're going to take a look at is OSHA, which stands for Occupational and Safety Administration. The second one is SDS, which stands for Safety Data Sheets. And our third one is HCS, which stands for Hazards Communication Standards. So we're going to focus today a little bit more on the federal agencies and its responsibilities. And then we're going to focus on state agencies at a later time. We are going to give just a general overview of what it is, but today we're going to focus a little bit more on the federal agencies. So let's go ahead and begin. So why do we have the federal agencies and the state agencies? Well, they're the ones that regulate the practice of cosmetology. So basically, they're the ones that say what can legally be done. And if you do something illegally, they're the ones that find the salons, okay? So they do this because they want to make sure that there's order in the cosmetology industry. So let's go ahead and begin with the federal agency. So one of the responsibilities of the federal agency is the manufacturing. So that means that they overlook the type of equipment that is used in the salons. They also look at the sales, like what exactly is being sold in the salons, to make sure that they're actually using things that are not toxic. And they also overlook the use of equipment. So not only how things are being made, but how they are being used. They also look at the use of the ingredients, the chemicals, what's inside of them. And so all this they monitor the manufacturing, the sales, the use of equipment, the use of chemical ingredients. They do all this to make sure that you guys are in a safe workplace, okay? And they also make sure that the type of services that you guys are doing in a salon can actually be performed and that it's legal, okay? So this is the federal agency, and these are all the responsibilities that it has. So when the federal agency makes a law, the law is going to pertain to everyone in the United States because the federal agency is basically the U.S. government, okay? The state agencies, that one is only going to pertain to the certain state. So for us, in our case, it would be Texas. So state agencies, okay, only if they make a law, it's only going to pertain to the people, like I said, in our case, Texas, all right? So whatever, law they make, whatever the state agency makes, doesn't necessarily going to pertain to anybody in Florida or in California, for example. So state agencies, what they do is they regulate the licensing, okay? So they are the ones that say, how many hours do you have to have in order to get your license? How much is it going to cost, and how often do you have to renew? They also enforce, make sure that you're renewing your license. If it becomes inactive, or you don't renew it, or you don't do your continuing education, they're the ones that say, all right, well, this is what we're going to have to do. And then lastly, they're the ones that overlook your conduct in the workplace. So if you're constantly getting fined or doing something that you're not supposed to do, the state agency is the one that's going to come back and close down your salon. So the state agency, like I said, regulates the licensing. And in the next slides, we're going to look at the different departments of the federal agencies. And like I said, we're not going to go into too much detail into the state agency, but just to give you kind of an idea, the state agency, one of the departments that it has under the state agency would be the TDLR, okay, which stands for Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. So TDLR is the one that gives you your license and where you have to show your hours of continuing education and so forth. So that's just one example of the type of department that's under the state agencies. But now we're going to go ahead and look at the departments that are under the federal agencies. So The federal agencies, has a lot of responsibilities. So obviously it cannot do everything on its own. So one of the departments that the federal agencies have is the U.S. Department of Labor. Okay. And once again, the U.S. Department of Labor has a lot of responsibilities. So they created their own department that would help with the workforce. So the U.S. Department of Labor created OSHA. All right. So what exactly does OSHA do? Well, they regulate and enforce safety and health standards to protect employees. Okay. So their focus is on the employees and your workplace. They make sure that you're going to be in a safe working environment. And how do they do this? Well, what is their goal actually? They want to make sure that they keep not just cosmetologists, because OSHA does overlook other industries, but right now we're talking about cosmetology, but they want to make sure that we're safe from toxins and hazards. Okay. So, that's a big responsibility that they hold. And why is it important in cosmetology? Because obviously we use a lot of products in the salon. So they want to make sure that we're using chemicals that are not going to be harmful to our health. So basically, they want to keep the workplace safe, and they want to make sure that, there's not hazards ingredients in the chemicals that we're using, and they want to make sure that we know how to avoid these dangers. Okay. So the OSHA, okay, created the Occupational Safety and Health Act, okay, in 1970. And this Health Act created another department, which is the HCS. And HCS stands for Hazard Communication Standards, okay? So let me rewind a little bit just so that you guys don't feel lost. So once again, the federal agency created the U.S. Department of Labor, okay? And the U.S. Department of Labor created OSHA to do all this work, okay? And because one of their responsibilities, right, is toxins, OSHA created an act in 1970, okay? And this act created another department that was going to focus on this right here, okay? And HCS stands for Hazard Communication Standards. So basically what that is, it requires that chemical manufacturers and importers be assessed. So what does that mean? That means that HCS is going to require a person, a manufacturer, okay, who creates a chemical to let the people that are going to be using it know if it's dangerous or if it's not dangerous. And if it is, what can we do to safely use this product? So HCS, okay, created what's called at first it was called MSDS, okay, which stands for Material Safety Data Sheet. The new name for MSDS is now SDS. But HCS created Material Safety Data Sheet. And once again, what's the new name? SDS, okay? And SDS stands for Safety Data Sheet. And it's basically what it says, okay? It's sheets that are going to talk to you about the person's chemicals, and it's going to give you a lot of information, okay? So in order for HCS, okay, to make sure that all the safety data sheets that were created had all the information that it needed, it made sure that it complied with the globally harmonized system. That means that it's going to give all the information about how to classify the chemicals and what type of labeling it would need to have. Okay? And the SDS is created for each chemical that is going to be used in a salon. So for example, you will find an SDS for shampoo. You will find a safety data sheet for acetone. You will find an SDS sheet for spray for each type of hairspray, right? Because each company makes their product differently. And inside, if we were to open the SDS or, print out an SDS sheet for each product, every single SDS sheet is going to have 16 categories. They might not all have information. For the most part, they do because it's a chemical. But every single SDS sheet will have 16 categories. And what those categories basically, it's going to give you the right to know what is inside that product and how to better understand how to use it, how to dispose of it, and so forth. Okay? So you need to make sure that you are educated on reading an SDS. And we're going to go over that in lesson 1B. But for now, make sure that you guys know what OSHA stands for. Make sure that you know what SDS stands for, and make sure that you know what HCS stands